This is CLIL number 6, Assessment in CLIL, which was recorded on the 10th of June 2009.
Perhaps we could ask Adrian, would you mind saying a couple of words about who you are to the rest of the group? Because I don't know if you've actually met everybody, so it might be nice if you could say just a couple of words about yourself.
Yeah, no, I think I've only met a couple of people before from the group. Yeah, I'm based in the UK. I'm an EFL trainer and writer, and I write CLIL material for One Stop CLIL. Basically, what I would call soft CLIL. So it's from the language point of view, adding language to the CLIL content.
Great. And the other colleagues, Adrian, if I may, just go through them rather than ask them to chip in, because they've done this before a few times now. Peach is based in Switzerland and has a training and teaching role, and also I think materials writing, Peach, if I'm not mistaken.
Materials, sort of looking at materials and evaluating materials, not writing itself. Okay. Not yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Sabina is a science and religious studies teacher in Germany through the medium of English. Lauretta is a teacher and teacher trainer in the north of Italy with an interest in CLIL, but has a linguist background. I think your background is German, isn't it, Lauretta?
Yes. I taught German for 20 years, and now I'm trainers and researchers,
okay.
And especially in CLIL topics.
Uh-huh.
And our other person, we've got Lubov, who you might have met before, but maybe conferences in Bulgaria. Lubov's a biology teacher in English in a school which offers IB in Sofia.
Yeah, we met. Last time we met was in Plovdiv a couple of years ago.
Okay. Now I'm not having any luck with Ben. So what I suggest we do is, if his status changes to available, I'll try and bring him in if I notice that happening. Otherwise, we can bash on and see how far we get. I sent a message with some ideas about a structure we might follow, and I've also uploaded quite a lot of examples of test materials and documents about testing for subjects in English. But do feel free to go off in a different direction if the discussion takes us that way. I wondered if we could ask, if you don't mind, our subject teaching colleagues to say a few words about how you go about testing your students in your subjects. So those are science in English and religious studies in English. What sort of things do you do with them? If you pay attention to language at all, say a few things about that. Lubov, would you like to have a go?
Okay. Well, I do test only biology content. I don't grade English language, although I do point a lot of attention to the language, but I don't feel I have to assess language. I do correct mistakes in tests or in oral presentations, sometimes in oral presentations, but I don't grade them. That's my way. And I don't do it because that would frustrate my students more. I mean, biology in the high school is enough for them to be graded.
But you're also suggesting probably that your students can cope with their subject in English as a foreign language, aren't you, I think?
Yes, to a great extent. Most of them do very little mistakes in spelling. Sometimes they do grammar mistakes, like they change the word order as it is in Bulgarian. So as long as the text is understandable, I correct it. I would write the proper way, but I don't grade it. As far as the biology is fine.
And I suppose the outcome of that process of studying your school is the exam itself, isn't it? They have
yes.
They sit their IB exams in
right.
in English.
And one thing which is very interesting in the biology, IB biology, is that they get 2 points, 2 marks extra for quality of the text. And that's unique in science. I'm not sure about geography. I should check it. But neither physics nor chemistry has this. Only biology. 2 extra points for quality. Quality of the text. They, for example, they have extended the response question where there are 3 questions, in fact. If they manage to link 2 of them, or at best the 3 of them, they get quality points.
That's interesting. But it's quite vague. It sounds like it's quite a vague description for those extra 3 marks.
Right. I think it's the examiners, they have even more details, but that's for me.
Maybe we could ask Sabina, what sort of experiences do you have testing your students in your subjects in English?
Yes, in my lessons in biology, I take some multiple choice tests and some tests. But it's
Can I stop you 1 second? I hear you very, very faintly. Is it possible for you to put your microphone a little bit closer to see if that makes a difference?
Yes, okay. You hear it better?
That's much better, yes.
Yes. But we have 2 parts. One of them is the multiple choice test for questions for the biology, and the other one, they are also for presentation. They are also quality points for a good presentation. But I don't take lots of tests. The most important things are the biology text. Yes.
And what were your age students again, Sabina? I've forgotten.
The students are at the between 10 and 12 years, and one of them are older, between 16 and 18 years.
And that's quite interesting, isn't it? That I think both of our subject colleagues are describing students. It sounds like they can already cope with their subjects in English, so that when they are assessed, there's not much attention to the language. Would you say that's true?
At the last telephone call, I have said that we make a team teaching because of all the English presentation words. We have an English teacher, and for all the classic biology things, I take the correction. It's so easy in biology because the contents of biology is in the most language. It's English or Latin or Greece, and so it's easy for me to control the content, but the English grammar and something like this, there is an English teacher to correct this part.
So do you deal with the tests together as well in collaboration?
Yes, that's true.
And do they get a subject mark and a language mark?
Yeah, that's all. And for both of these things, the people get points. Biology points and English points. For the
do jump in, colleagues, if any of you feel a carrot you'd like to grab hold of.
Well, I've got a question, if I can ask a question, Keith, about for Lvov and for Sabina and anybody else. Do you think that the students' ability in English might prevent them from giving the answers to the subject? So in other words, they might know the subject, but they can't express what they want to say in English. Do you think that could ever occur?
If I'm the first to go, yes, that do occur a lot, especially when people transfer from one school to another. For example, I have a student who is very weak in English, and for 2 years he refuses to make any progress. It's very difficult to assess him in biology classes, because all my tests are in English. So I have to either help him to understand the question, and then he answers in Bulgarian, or I just give him completely different tests. That happened, and it won't be fair for the student's grade to assess him in English, because otherwise he won't manage because of the language. But that's of course a parent's responsibility for sending him in a language school where he has no language abilities. That's my point.
Sabrina, do you have an opinion about that? You know, I think Adrian's saying, do you have students who actually may know the subject but not have enough English to be able to express their understanding of the content?
Yeah, if people don't understand something, then we talk this also in German language. It's not only the whole lesson is always in English, because we then to declare something, then we take also the German language. It's not only the whole 50 or 60 minutes only in English to declare or to give information, because something in the text maybe the pupils don't understand this, and so we can say it also in German.
I met some colleagues in Austria, in Innsbruck, who actually said to me that, and these are all subject teachers who were being prepared to give their students the option of doing their school leaving exam for their subject in English. And my work with them was to try and give them some ideas about dealing with the language of their subject. And these colleagues actually said that they would be giving the students the option. If they come to the exam in English and they feel they can't manage, they would actually allow them to carry on in German.
Yes, that's also German in my lesson.
Yeah. What do the other colleagues feel about that?
Well,
Sorry.
Go on.
Teach and then Loretta. Should we do it that way?
Okay, right. Well, the situation I'm in central Switzerland is slightly different, because CLIL is driven by English language teaching, by introducing English as a foreign language at primary. We're trying to include a lot of content, but into the language subject. And secondly, it's kind of a top-down approach where we're encouraging teachers to include more and more content. And as a result, of course, assessment is done purely on a language basis. Now, in our training courses, the teachers have been asking whether they could or should or have to assess content as well. And at the moment, because everything is so new and we haven't got a lot of experience, my advice to the teachers is try it out, but do not grade it. So what they do is they assess language competence, and a couple of very motivated teachers try to include 1 or 2 questions per test, whether the students have grasped the content of a teaching unit or so.
Yes, Loretta.
Yes, as you remember, I spoke about the Italian approach to CLIL, that is a collaborative one. That is to say that subject and language teacher interact both in the preparation of materials and in sometimes in running the lesson itself. And it is very common, or I would say it is the rule, almost the rule, that the subject teacher and the language teacher correct and then give points together to the testing activity, to the tasks that the pupils have carried out. And this brings to a special situation, from my point of view, that in the preparation of the test, the language teacher and the subject teacher integrate content and language skills. And this makes sometimes more difficult for the students. And sometimes they tend to be very essential in their answers.
Can I summarize a little bit what you said? Because I gave some input to a discussion in young learners and teenagers group recently, where there was a lot of feeling that if content is going to come into language teaching, so this is really recapping Cece's point, that the content should also be assessed. There was a lot of feeling that should be the case, that both should be graded, and it's interesting for us as language teachers to consider what that means for our language teaching, doesn't it? And the other thing is, in Maretta's context, teachers working together, so you've got a subject teacher and a language teacher, both maybe teaching and preparing and teaching lessons, but also both contributing to testing in a similar way to Sabine described. Do you feel that, does anybody feel that there's a better way of dealing with it? That's a very silly question really, I suppose, because all the contexts are different, but you might talk a little bit about what doesn't work, I suppose. I could actually give some good examples of contexts where things are not working very well, and I wondered if you have examples of mistakes, examples of failure, if you like, in this area. Gone silent. I've lost
Well, if I may jump in again, I think that it is important to evaluate both content and language. I don't think it is enough to evaluate content without taking into consideration language skills.
And are you talking about language lessons, Laura, or content lessons?
No, I'm talking about CLIL lesson. I mean, science, for example, of geography, or if you run a CLIL lesson, you have to take both aspects, from my point of view, into consideration. That is to say, content, but if the language level of performance is not acceptable, you should find a different way. You should offer the possibility to be tested later in the mother tongue, but in that precise testing activity, you should take into consideration the fact that the performance was not acceptable.
Okay, and I suppose, what you're saying is that the CLIL is the determining factor for the test. So if it's a language teacher offering a testing, a CLIL test to their language students, they would need to have some attention to content. And if it's a content teacher, a CLIL content teacher doing a test, then they would have to have some attention to language in the test. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think that's a principle, at least, isn't it? In this area which my colleagues in the Young Learners and Teenagers group said, there's very little guidance. That itself is at least a principle, that whatever we say about CLIL tests, there has to be some attention to language and attention to content. But it's interesting that there are many different ways of going about that, aren't there?
Yeah, and I personally think it's also a chance for collaboration, that where CLIL is pushed by or driven by the language side, that language teachers try and collaborate with science teachers, at least for assessment, and vice versa.
Yeah. I'm just trying to make some notes. Sorry about that. I was going silent. Please do jump in, the others, if you want to comment about that area of collaboration.
Well, I think the principles are very good. I think the idea of collaboration is very good. With two, with the subject teacher and the language teacher working together. My main concern is what happens with the students. Is that you can have a student who's particularly good at a subject, but because of their language level not being so good, they're almost penalised for their in their subject, if you see what I mean. They could be excellent scientists, but they can't express themselves, and I don't know how we get around that problem, because I mean, one thing that has been mentioned is the opportunity to do the test in their own language, whether it be Bulgarian or German or something like that. But if the class has been taught in English, they may then lack the language they need in their mother tongue to do the test. So that's my concern, really. I mean, as Keith will know from what we've spoken about before.
Well, I remember a couple of years ago, during a course in Norwich, Keith and Dave Allen actually came up with a solution which theoretically seems to work quite well. On the one hand, you test language in L2, then additionally you sort of assess content in L2, and you assess content in L1. The only problem is, if you try and do that thoroughly and conscientiously, you will do nothing else than assessing students, and you haven't got or not much time for teaching itself. And that's the main problem. That's a very practical problem.
But Peach, they'd also need to be taught the content in their L1 as well to be to stand a fair chance. So you'd be double teaching.
Yes, true. I mean, I'm sort of suggesting that from the point of view of my situation here, where CLIL is being driven by L2, by English. So we've got sort of, let's say, the content teacher teaching content, and